Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the official episode 1 of the Crisis Right podcast. My name is Zach Steffi, and honestly, I'm trying to figure out how to format these episodes still. I'm not sure. Clearly, I'm in the same spot, same shirt and everything that I was the last episode because I'm recording it right after. But I'm just trying to figure out how to format these guys, mainly because I want it to run a little smoother than it might this episode. So definitely bear with me. But today's episode is about trust. This is something that the Lord has been putting on my heart pretty heavily recently, pretty nonstop. I mean, even for the past year or so. Now, just to give a little bit of backstory of exactly why it is that trust is weighed so heavily. Mainly, I feel like in the past year or so, the Lord has been, developing my testimony. And, before I always thought to myself, like, oh, I think I got one. I think I have a testimony. I think I'm good. But what I never really realized is that it's building every day. It really is. I mean, it's gonna build until the day I'm dead, right? I was in church the one day, and this is when it really sprung up, and it was baptism Sunday, and it was a beautiful thing to see. And before they got baptized, they had their testimonies that they explained, and it made me reflect on necessarily what mine is, and um, that really lasted for a short amount of time. It was kind of the drive home thing, and I was like, maybe I don't have as much of a testimony. I was thinking to myself what I could explain to encourage people, and it's still developing, and I think that's something I'm coming to realize as the days go on, right? But like I said, today's episode is about trust. The biggest thing about trust for me is that I'm even currently at a position where I don't fully understand what trust is. And this, it could truthfully, it can mean a number of things. If you want to go a route of relationally, trust is just basically knowing that the other person won't do you wrong. And at a surface level, that could be very, very true, I guess, at a very, very surface level. But I think trust is a lot deeper than that, especially when it relates or relates to Christ and to God. Um, Trust is a lot more than that. Now, in relation to that, it talks about trust quite a lot in the Bible, right? Proverbs is a huge book um, about wisdom. It's very, very as I've heard it before, it's nuggets of wisdom. Shout out Bryce Crawford, but it's nuggets of wisdom that you can get throughout the Bible. And there's two specific verses that pop into my head whenever I think about trust, and it's Proverbs chapter 3 verses 5 and 6, where it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths." Sorry. Um, that's a very common one. A lot of people hear this a lot, and a lot of people preach about it, which is great. It's the truth. This verse, truthfully, it's the definition, in my opinion, of what it is to trust. And you might be thinking, well, what does that have to do with relationships, or what does that have to do with day to day? And the answer to that is not only okay. It says trust in the Lord with all your heart. That means everything that you have on your heart, whether it be anything relational, whether it be anything friendship wise, whether it be anything with your future, if something's weighing on your heart, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. Your thoughts are corrupt. I personally have experienced, my feelings are corrupt, and it my feelings never lead me to the right spot. Um, and I know it does talk about that somewhere in the Bible. So if somebody wants to throw that verse in the comments, that'd be great. But truthfully, it does. Like, it's very important to understand that your feelings will not lead you in a direction of success, in a direction of, prosperation. You won't prosper based off of your own feelings. And this is something I've been very, 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 like, I've been learning. I've been experiencing this firsthand, and I have been for a while. I just never understood exactly what trust is, and it's one of those things where you're like, of course, of course I should trust God. Of course I should, you know, have Him guide me and trust in His word over my own, right? Of course. But when it comes to day to day, that could be very, very hard. Uh, you go out and you have a conversation with somebody, and you don't think about it. Something goes wrong in your life, and immediately you think, how can I fix this, right? Or at least this is just me. How can I fix this to make this easier, to make this better, to resolve this issue? But understanding that you cannot do it alone, and you cannot lean on your own understanding, as it says in Proverbs chapter 3. You cannot lean on your own understanding, but in all ways you acknowledge Him, and He will make straight your paths, right? And when it says acknowledge Him, okay, it's more than just, a hi God, hello, like you're there. It's more of understanding the circumstance and understanding what it is that God can do for you in that circumstance. Acknowledge Him. Know that although this may seem crippling, and this may seem like the end, or end all be all, whatever it is, and it can come from a job circumstance, like I said, a relational circumstance. It could come from any of these types of things. But understanding that trusting in Christ and trusting in God is far, 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 far better, far more important than trusting in your own understanding, right? And trusting in your own feelings. Like I said before, our feelings are corrupt. There's no, the enemy, has a lot of sway, in our brain. Satan has a lot of sway in our brain, and it does say in the Bible, God talks about, my thoughts are not your thoughts, as my ways are not your ways. You cannot think to yourself, oh, I swear I heard God, saying something to me, and I swear I heard Him talking to me, and I swear I heard Him say something. Like, my thoughts are not your thoughts, as in my ways are not your ways. And that could be a pretty tough verse to hear, because from a personal standpoint, of course, I want to be more Christ-like. I want to be more like God, and well, more like Christ, and the example that He set. It's just understanding that you have to humble yourself, humble yourself, and understand that your ways are wicked. Your thoughts are wicked. Your understanding is false. You can't truly have understanding without the Lord. So know that. One more verse I do want to talk about. It's from the Old Testament. It's I have a really hard time pronouncing this, but Habakkuk, Habbakuk. It's an Old Testament book, very short, a couple chapters. I do recommend reading it. It's a book really based on trust, and based on trusting God. The verse I portioned out here was chapter 2, verse 3, where it says, "For the revelation awaits on an appointed time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and will not delay." Now, what does this mean, right? The Old Testament speaks in a lot of very hard words sometimes. I'm a very, like, I have a King James version of my Bible, and sometimes I look at words and I have to look them up, right? But when it says, for the revelation awaits on appointed time, it's basically saying, that breakthrough, that revelation, right? It's it's scheduled almost. It's due at a certain time. It will not be rushed, and it speaks of the end and will not prove false. Okay, your revelation, your breakthrough, is that end and will not prove false when it hits its appointed time. And although it linger, although it waits, although it takes its time, you must wait for it. You must have trust and wait for it, for it will certainly come and will not delay. Understanding that although things may seem crazy, things may seem like everything's crashing down and everything's going wrong, the true point of trust is to understand that God has a plan. It all goes back to the Lord's plan and Christ's plan for us, understanding that it's not on our own timing, and we must be patient. And I'm sure some of you, if you guys are pretty into the mainstream, Christian social media, I guess, the one thing I learned was from Cliff Knechtle. Not just one thing, but the one thing I did remember specifically was, your prayers, God always has a couple answers, no, go, slow. There's another one, right? It really bothered me. I didn't want to misquote him, so I had to go double check. No, slow, grow, and go. No meaning nobody wants to hear no, right? Things we ask for, and then things of that nature, and nobody ever wants to hear no. Everybody, it's like Amazon Prime nowadays. Everything has to be now. Back in the day, people had to wait, couple weeks. Getting a package in a week was fast. Now 2 days, and people are worried about where their package is. But truthfully, like I was saying, it's no, slow down, not yet, right? Grow, meaning you may be in the midst of it, right? You need to grow before you get this thing you're asking for. You need to dig deeper into God's word, and you need to dig deeper into my word, to grow, and then you may get this thing, or go, meaning yes, go ahead, right? Go is pretty self-explanatory there, but no, meaning no, it's not my timing, not going to happen. Slow, meaning slow down, still not my timing. And grow, meaning grow up, develop yourself before you get a chance to even acknowledge something that you're asking for, right? You have to, there are things we have to earn, and there are obviously things we must learn from and must grow from. So we need to grow from those things. And go, meaning go. You will know when God says go. Let alone any of these things, but pay close attention. Either way, it all circles back to understanding that trust is understanding that God's timing is his own. And we may not understand, but patience, though it linger, wait for it, right? Have patience and trust in God that these things will happen. These things will come to you. These things will be made apparent. These things will happen for you. And if not, it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't in your plan. It wasn't, but don't, like I said, be patient. You cannot sit there and be like, oh, nothing's happening, I'm assuming it's not going to happen, right? No, you have to be patient. Give it time. Be cautious and very, be in the moment. Understand what's going on, because so you can pick up these no's, slows, grows, and goes, right? These are very important. it's truthfully, like I said, it's very important to trust God and understand that it is His timing and not our own. Now, a good question is, okay, like, how can I apply this, not just, just trust in general from Christ into my own life? And like I've said to you guys earlier, I'm still trying to understand that too. I'm still trying to learn about that as well. And the understanding that I have gathered so far is to trust everything and give all of your life to God. All of it. Surrender yourself, as He says. And trusting in that He will take care of you, so that no matter if something is going on, if these trials and these tribulations, that not only we should be thankful for, because we may grow from them, but these trials and these tribulations, but also like just everything in your day-to-day, you must trust Him with. And you must understand that if certain things are happening in your life that you wanted to, of course you didn't want to happen, you have to understand that it's not your timing. It's not your will. We have to submit ourselves to Christ, submit ourselves to God, and understand that it is His will be done, not ours. It is the Father's will that be done, not our own. No matter how hard things get, that's when you have to lean on Him. Do not lean on your own understanding, right? Must lean on Him and acknowledge Him in every single way, so that it is easier to not only trust Him, but to be able to trust others as well. Trusting Christ makes it 10 times easier to trust others. Because especially if they've never given you a reason to not trust them, right? Relationally talking, or friendship wise, understanding what trust is through Christ makes it a lot easier to trust other people. Either way, that might be the end of this episode. That's about all I got for trust. If you guys have anything to say in discussion about the episode, I will be in the comments. I will be looking, paying attention. I hope to hear from you guys. I hope to, like I said, I hope to hear from you guys, and I hope you guys come back for the next episode. I do plan to be a little more prepared in that episode, to talk a little more extenuously. But like I said, I truly, truly hope this has touched some of you, and maybe that it helps some of you guys understand that trust doesn't come from ourselves. Trust doesn't come from our own feelings. It comes from Christ, and it comes from God and the principles they have set. And the just trusting in them is a role model almost. It's a baseline on how to trust others and trust, and who to really give your trust to, if that makes sense. But like I said, I do plan to be a little more prepared next time. I hope you guys still enjoyed this video, though. Like I said before, it's always open to discussion. I hope to hear from you guys. But remember, Christ is right, Christ is divine, and Christ is true. Stay with Him, as He will always stay with you. Peace out, guys.